There's 5 traits that make the best construction managers stand out. Learning what they are and then adopting them is one of the fastest ways you can get ahead in your career. Trait number 1, they're smart, but they don't think they're too smart. Construction projects are messy and complicated, with materials being ordered, activities starting, commercial and technical issues arising every single day. No single person can solve everything, but somebody needs to be aware of what's important and what matters. Good construction managers are like the conductors of an orchestra. They don't know how to play any single instrument, but they understand how they all sound, they listen to them, and they know how everything fits together. They know how to keep everybody in harmony. Let's imagine a high-rise building project where the plumbers are ready to start installing piping, but the concreting crew hasn't finished the formwork and the reinforcement. A good construction manager understands the domino effect of this delay. So they go and work with the concrete foreman to understand what the delay is and how to resolve it. They work with the plumbing subcontractor to work out where else they could send the plumbers, and they develop a plan that incorporates the input from both of these parties that's best for the project and prioritizes the success of the project. This requires somebody who's smart enough to keep track of everything that's happening in the big picture, but humble enough to listen to their team. The next important trait for good construction managers is that they're strategic. Being able to keep track of everything that's happening and listening to your team is important, but ultimately it comes down to your ability to decide what's the most important thing, and out of all the competing objectives, what should you focus on? There's always going to be too many problems and too little time. I worked on a project once that I thought had the laziest construction manager. He would disappear for hours at a time. He's always keen for a chat, and he always seemed super relaxed and never working. However, when a big issue came up, like a key supplier being delayed, he was suddenly across the details and investigating the problem. He was laser focused on solving a problem he knew that mattered most. While to us he seemed lazy, in reality he was laser focused on the problems that mattered, the key issues that related to project success. Being strategic means focusing on the outcomes that matter, not necessarily being across every detail, but understanding what the key important issues are and working on fixing them. Trait number 3 is resilience. When things go wrong, and they will, a resilient project manager doesn't dwell on what's happened and doesn't look to blame people. They simply focus on how are they going to solve the problem. For example, if a concrete supplier calls and cancels your big pour you've got tomorrow, what can you do? You can blame the supplier, or you can go around and call 20 other batch plants to find someone who can fulfill your order. When things go wrong, we need to be resilient and we need to focus on solving the problems rather than blaming others. Trait number 4 is they're systematic. Construction projects are inherently chaotic, and great construction managers focus on creating systems that address the chaos. They want to address root causes, not symptoms. They don't want to be always fighting fires. They want to be putting in place processes that avoids the fires starting. Let me give you an example of how the best and the worst construction managers would tackle the same problem. Let's imagine some works have been delayed. The bad construction manager would blame the person managing the works. They'd get angry at them, they'd shout at them, they'd fight to address the symptom, they'd do what they could, and then the same thing would happen a couple of weeks later. The only difference now is everybody is stressed and upset. What does a good construction manager do? Well, when they find out the works have been delayed, they ask why. They find out that a key material hasn't been delivered in time for the works. So they ask why again. They found out that the supplier didn't receive the purchase order in time. So they ask why they didn't receive the purchase order. They find out that the purchase order hadn't been issued by the admin team. They ask why again. They find out that the admin team was struggling to keep track of the number of purchase orders and tracking them all. Bingo, they found the root cause, so they put in place a way to track purchase orders that makes the process more systematic and streamlined for everyone. Sure, they still have to address the current symptom, which is the works being delayed, but they put in place a system that prevents the same thing from happening a couple of weeks later. And the final trait is one that I find particularly hard, but it's a willingness to have difficult conversations. Construction is tough. Conflicts arise from bad attitudes, poorly written contracts, or underperforming team members. Great managers don't shy away from these difficult conversations. Whether it's holding subcontractors accountable and negotiating variations, good construction managers don't shy away from difficult conversations. Adapting these 5 traits is one of the simplest and easiest ways you can get ahead as a construction manager. If you want to learn more about advancing in your career and getting ahead in the construction industry, then watch this video next, where I go back and tell myself what I wish I knew when I started my career 10 years ago.